Good morning and welcome to Notre Dame. Welcome to week 4, I believe we're in. No, we're starting week 5. Here's Notre Dame behind me. Let me show you a little bit of the park here. Just a little bit. My iPhone doesn't turn around once I've started videoing. So I'm here today to talk to you about Victor Hugo. The Hunchback of Notre Dame was Victor Hugo's 4th novel. He also wrote Les Mis, which is very interesting and kind of gives you a view of his broader intentions politically. Kind of points out that he was an author who was looking at more than just a good story. In fact, Van Gogh actually called Hugo's works astonishing, which I think is saying a lot. Victor Hugo actually, I think we talked about this last week, he inspired Bram Stoker, and he actually inspired Dickens and Tolstoy, among others. So, like I've said before in our in-person classes, you have to look at literature as making a conversation, right? The authors are almost speaking to each other. They're responding to works that they've seen, they're responding to what they see in public, and here you have Dickens, Tolstoy, and Stoker all responding to Victor Hugo, which is amazing. So I want you also to kind of place this not only in the beautiful setting of Paris, but also in the Romantic era. This came in, I believe, 1831, so it's just, about 13 years after, 13, 15 years, something like that, after the first publication of Frankenstein. So keep it in that context. So it's after Frankenstein, or before Frankenstein, no, I'm sorry, jet lag, after Frankenstein, but before Dracula. So in like the other romantics, you have the desire for complete freedom. So freedom, not just free as in we think of Mel Gibson freedom, but like freedom mentally, freedom of thought, freedom of individuality. So when Hugo wrote this book, he intended you to interpret it individually. He didn't have a mass interpretation that he wanted you to approach it with. He didn't expect everyone to walk away with the same thought patterns. In fact, he desired you to see this individually, and in order to do so, he's going to put his characters in very complex situations where there's not necessarily a right or wrong. Where you might enter this book assuming that, this character is going to be the good guy and this one's going to be the bad guy, you're going to find that even the bad guy has aspects about him that are good, and that the good guy might have some morally ambiguous areas that you're not so sure about. So keep that in mind and approach this with kind of an open mind as to who might be the good guy and who's the bad guy, and so forth. And let me see, the monster in this one, jumping onto another topic, is different than the other monsters that we've seen before. So Frankenstein was a created monster, and we talked about how he was abandoned as a child, and that helped to lead to what he became. And you have Dracula, which is more of the supernatural monster. Here you have Quasimodo, who is the monster hero. And I want us to kind of question, really, who is the monster in this? When we look at a hunchback today, we look at somebody who has scoliosis, right, that was born a little bit differently than everyone else. Let's kind of approach that and look at how society at the time looked at a deformity or a handicap, similar to what you've seen in Phantom of the Opera, where the deformity is a little bit more clear in the movie than, or interpreted more clearly or differently in the movie than in the actual novel. But let's kind of put those two monsters together in that sense. But what's different here is that you have the monster hero, as I said. Instead of just somebody who's become vicious, you have somebody who is caring, who cares for those who treat him well around him. So I want us to look at that. I want us to look at setting. You can see it's quite beautiful here. We're in the city of Paris, right? It's a beautiful area. And what does that do to help you interpret the monster? When we looked at Frankenstein, you had Frankenstein in the mountains and in these beautiful areas, and Dracula you have starting out in Transylvania, and we've talked about that. Well, what does it do to your understanding of the novel to have it here in Paris? I want you to think about that. And, of course, as always, think about gender. How is gender presented? How are the different gender roles set out into the novel for you? And remember that the author intended for you to have individual interpretations of the novel, so we might not all agree on that. There's no right answer here. Look for any political commentary and social commentary. And like I said, look at the setting and look at the use of handicap in the novel. Also, I want you to look at how he uses descriptive words. Victor Hugo was a very talented individual. He wasn't just a novel writer, right? He was also a poet. He worked in the theater, he worked in graphic arts and interior design. So he was an artist, right? This was a very creative person. So pay attention to how he uses wording to make a setting. He said that he had a lot of trouble describing the setting. So how do you see that? Did he do a good job immersing you in his world? How does he do that? Or does he fail to do that? And I want you to compare that with the other novels too. This is something I want to be discussing when I get back. How does the setting and the description of the world that he's created affect you and your understanding of the monster? And how does that work compared to Frankenstein and Dracula? Let me see here. I think I have covered everything that I wanted to cover. One more thing is that this is a very well adapted novel. It's been adapted into a lot of different film versions for 100 years. The Disney one is the one that we're watching for class, so watch it and be ready to compare the movie with the book in our upcoming classes. This movie has been called the most adult of the Disney movies, which sounds a lot more ominous than I think that it is, but I'm looking forward to discussing this book with you in upcoming classes. Enjoy your reading, and I'll see you soon.